Hello, my name is Aidyn Walkish. I am in Dr. B's 5th grade class. Today is March 20th, 2017, and I will be interviewing my grandpa. What are some obstacles you have faced, and how did you overcome these obstacles?
Some of the obstacles that I would have had to overcome in life, one of them would have been when I was a young boy, much younger than you, 5 years of age. I succumbed to a disease at that time, which is relatively common to a lot of children at that time, called rheumatic fever. I had suffered cold exposure or something like that, and it affected my heart. My heart was not able to pump blood in a normal fashion to my lower extremities, and it paralyzed me from the waist down. Later in life, when I was 19 years of age, the Vietnam War was going on, and I was drafted into the service. So, overcoming the first obstacle, rheumatic fever, when you're paralyzed from the waist down and you have very little mobility, if my parents went out of the house, and we lived in a very rural community, and they had to go out and get groceries and do other things where I would be left alone. They would carry me from my bed down to the couch. I would watch TV in the living room. This would be about 1952. And at that time, if I had to go to the bathroom and my parents were away, I was in a little bit of a dilemma. The way I overcame that was through sheer will. I would pull myself off the couch, and then using my elbows, raising my torso up, basically crawl my way to the bathroom, which was on the first floor where I was watching TV, but probably about 30 feet away. And I would crawl myself to the bathroom, pull myself up on the potty, because my lower body was useless. I couldn't walk, so I basically had to drag the lower half of my body. And then I would use the bathroom and clean myself, and then I would crawl back to the couch and pull myself up on the couch, again just using the force of my upper torso, because my lower torso was no use to me. Later that year, I was in the hospital. They had drugs that they put into me and medicines that they gave me, and it finally cured my rheumatic fever. When shortly after Christmas, this would have been January of 1953, I was able to again start to walk again, and it's a slow progress, but it's sort of like a rehabilitation, and you slowly get that. Within about 2 years, I was constantly under doctor surveillance. In fact, I can remember my doctor's name at that time. His name was Dr. Garofalo, and he was located in a small rural town in Pennsylvania, close to the town I grew up in. And Dr. Garofalo, by the time I was 7 years of age, had treated me into hospital and had taken care of me and said that I was pretty much cured. So that worked out well for me, and then I was able to resume the rest of my life. The Vietnam adventure, on the other hand, I was drafted into the military in I think I got my notice, I want to say probably July or August of 1966, and I was supposed to go in December of 1966 was my time to enter the service. And at that time, my then girlfriend had a cousin that I was a very close friend with, and he was going into the military too at that time, but his draft day was going to be in October of 1966. So I called the local draft board. They okayed the procedure, and I basically volunteered to go a little earlier than my draft day specifically. And at that time I went into the service, and by doing that we were both able to go to the same duty station to take our boot camp, is what they call it, or at that time it was where you basically receive your training, your initial military training, how to dress, how to care for yourself, proper military haircuts, how to take care of your weapon, cleanliness, the uniforms you get and everything else, and then a lot of physical training. We would run 4 or 5 miles at a time. We would hike 10 miles at a time. We would had to do a lot of gymnastics, and where you did we used to call them monkey bars. I don't know what they call them now, but basically overhead bars. You had to go through so many of those to pass your physical examination, and then you had to do some soldiering, carry your weapon properly, learn how to dress yourself properly for military combat, the pack that you used, the equipment you used, your belt, your ammo belts, all those kinds of things, and how to care for that stuff and take care of it, how to clean your weapon, how to use the weapon, all those kinds of things is what they trained you for. As I say, as an obstacle in life, I was being pulled away from my family. I had a mother and a father and 2 brothers and a sister, and my dad wasn't in the greatest of health. And while I was in the military, my dad succumbed to an attack on his body by a leukemia-like disease, and so that was kind of a trial for me as a young man, having to deal with that separation and the distance between us being stationed in the military. Anyway, both of us went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. We took our basic training there. Then we each were separated. He went off to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and was in the Army Corps of Engineers as a water purification specialist. I, in turn, got shipped off to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I was assigned to a artillery acquisition survey school, and where you laid the coordinates for gun batteries and targeting, etc. After we did that, he stayed on assignment at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I, in turn, was shipped off to Fort Carson, Colorado, after I completed my Advanced Individual Training, AIT, at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I was shipped off to Fort Carson, Colorado. I was stationed there until I received orders to ship to Vietnam. And I went off to Vietnam in September of 1967, and I spent my entire 12 months in Vietnam except for emergency leave. They brought me home on a 2-week emergency leave in January of 1968 when my dad was sick, and they thought he might succumb to the disease, the leukemia. When that didn't happen, he got better, and he was pronounced pretty much cured. He came back home to live. I returned back to Vietnam. Later that year, in I believe it was June of 1968, my dad finally did succumb to the disease, and so they flew me home on emergency leave, where I attended my dad's funeral. And that was a very traumatic experience for me as a young man, just turning 21, and not spending the time you'd like to spend in your grown-up years with your father. Luckily, my mother's health hang on. She lived to be 93, but my dad passed away when he was only 62, and that was a tough thing. And then going back to Vietnam and dealing with the situations in Vietnam. Vietnam was a war zone. People were shooting at you. There were booby traps. There were a lot of things you had to be aware of. Wasn't concerned for myself as much as the other people around me, and concerned for my family at home. So that's what. Now I completed that. I shipped home in September of 1968, and I'm here with you now. So I survived all that. Those were obstacles I overcome. I would say most of it was through pure will and determination, and looking ahead to what life was to come, and where I later married my girlfriend. She became your grandmother.
What was the hardest part of overcoming these obstacles?
Well, obviously, when I had the rheumatic fever, the hardest part of overcoming that would have been the fact that you can't use your lower body, so you need your family support. My dad, obviously, and brothers helped carry me around and position me so that it was comfortable as possible. And then when I was hospitalized, obviously I had to wait till the drugs and medicines took effect to cure me. That would have been the hardest part of that. The Vietnam situation, again, that's more of a it's the mental attitude you go in with, and I think from a mental standpoint, it was just I wanted to get home and be with my family again. Obviously, with my immediate family, and with the hope of extending the relationship with my then girlfriend, your grandmother, and so those were probably the things that played toughest on you psychologically. As far as the danger in the war zone, I, I, I went through it, but I went through it with all the other guys. So you had a support group sort of in place just from having to serve with all the other men that sort of picked you up. I lost friends while I was in Vietnam, and that was hard too. But it's part of life because I lost relatives in life, and I continue to lose relative as you age. You do. People pass away that you were very fond of, and that's an unfortunate part. But I would say the hardest part is just dealing with the psychology of it all.
Did anyone help you overcome these obstacles? If so, who and how?
Yeah, I think your support base, your family and friends are probably the greatest things that help you overcome it. Again, with the rheumatic fever, if it weren't for my family, I would not have been in the hospital. I could not get the care I received, etc. If it weren't for my family and my then girlfriend, there was a lot of an emotional and psychological support. It was uplifting, and it drove me to make sure that I could safely come home again.
What advice would you give to someone who faces obstacles?
I think that I would say, again, reach deep into your own processes and think about it, and rely on your family to support you, and maybe even talk to the man upstairs, talk to God, have faith that you can overcome these things, and just believe in yourself and believe that you have the power and strength to overcome anything that gets in your way.
What is your outlook on life?
I think I have a pretty positive outlook on life. We certainly cherish our children and our grandchildren, of which you obviously are one, and the other three, and we love you all dearly. We would love to stick around as long as we can and participate and at least observe how you progress in life, and hopefully we'll be there to see you develop into the fine young men and young woman that my granddaughter will also achieve. And I'm positive. I believe that all men and women in general want to do good in life, and the bad in life is usually influenced by outside forces that they have no control of.
What is your source of encouragement and hope?
I would probably say, number one, your grandmother, being my partner in life, and then the family in general. Our children have all remained relatively close. They all live close by us here, where we're based now in North Carolina, and I would say that and our faith, and I believe that those are the things that I can draw off of, and that help us go day to day onto the next day, looking forward to getting up in the morning and enjoying what's coming in life.
What are your thoughts about the future?
Thinking about the future, I would say, again, as I said in my last answer, we would love to see each of our grandchildren and our children succeed in life, and we'd just like to be present as long as possible to enjoy that too. And hopefully the finances and our general health will allow us to do that.
Is there anything else you would like to say?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I was very lucky in life, very fortunate. I married the girl of my dreams, had 3 wonderful sons that made us very proud, and now we have 4 great-grandchildren that make us very, very proud, and we're looking forward to seeing you as you make your way into life and overcomes the obstacles that you have to achieve. I love you.